Hi everyone, I'm Amethyst, and welcome to Ask an Autistic.
I want a renaissance to shine a light, be the change we want, set things right. We've been waiting in the dark for so long.
Today I'm going to be talking about sensory processing disorder. Sensory processing disorder is a neurological condition in which the brain does not interpret sensory input from the environment correctly. A person with sensory processing disorder may be over or under sensitive to input from their environment, such as lights, colors, noises, music, people talking, smells, textures, and tastes. Every autistic person will have some kind of sensory integration issues. This is just part of our neurotype and part of what makes us autistic. But sensory processing disorder as a neurological diagnosis can exist on its own in non-autistic children. Sensory processing disorder really can affect and encompass all of the senses. Now, human beings actually have more than 5 senses. We have something like 18 to 22 depending on who you ask. But I think that there are the 7 basic senses that are important to know about to understand sensory processing disorder. So you have the basic 5, which I think everybody has heard of. That's taste, touch, smell, sight, sound. Yeah, I think I got that right. And then there are 2 senses that most people haven't heard of, and that is the proprioceptive sense and the vestibular sense. Proprioceptive sense is the sense of where your body is in space. It allows for you to know where your limbs are, how much force you're exerting on things, and also where you are spatially in your environment and how to interact with objects in your environment. The vestibular sense is the sense that is all about motion and movement. It is a sense that tells you if you are in motion or standing still, if you are up or down, swinging, spinning, upside down. All of that is informed by the vestibular sense. So, as I'm sure you can imagine, when a person is under or over sensitive to any of the sensory input that they may receive from their environment, their experience is going to be a lot different than a neurotypical person's, and their life is going to be very different because of the things that they have to deal with. For example, a child who is undersensitive to proprioceptive input may have trouble knowing where his body is in space. He may have trouble knowing how much pressure to exert on things, so he may either be too gentle and be, consistently dropping small objects, or he may be too rough in play and be constantly seeking out really rough activities that give him a lot of deep pressure input on his joints, like wrestling, jumping around, jumping on a trampoline. A person with sensory integration issues who is very sensitive to noise may have a lot of trouble with auditory processing issues when they're in a space where there's background noise like music or a lot of people talking, like in a restaurant. So while they can hear the person who is sitting across from them and speaking, they may not be able to interpret what the person is saying. They know that they're speaking, their brain just can't filter out all of the auditory information. So like I said, sensory processing issues can encompass and incorporate all of the senses. And everybody who has sensory integration issues, autistic or non-autistic, will have their own set of triggers, negative sensory input that causes them discomfort or pain. And many people who have sensory integration issues will have some sensory input that they actively seek out and they crave, often because they are undersensitive to it. So an autistic person who seeks out vestibular input because they're undersensitive to vestibular input may really enjoy activities like swinging on a swing or spinning on a tire swing or on a computer chair. Something that comes up a lot, and I get questions about this a lot, comes down to sensory defensiveness and food. Many autistic people have a very limited diet, and this is both due to love of routine and resistance to change, but also to sensory defensiveness. Sadly, children who are struggling with sensory integration issues may have their sensory defensiveness towards a certain texture or taste of food interpreted by their parents as just picky eating or even outward defiance, when this isn't the case. When you have sensory integration issues, you know that you're different and you wish that you weren't. Sensory integration issues and sensory processing disorder can cause a lot of grief in our daily life because this world isn't really built for us. it is so loud and so fast and so bright, and all the clothes are too tight and everything's too itchy, and it can be exhausting just trying to get some sleep at night with all these sounds all around. Sensory integration issues can be really hard to deal with, and it's important to remember that if you're having a showdown with your kid over dinner, they're not trying to be defiant to you. They're not just being a picky eater. If they have sensory processing issues, that is a real neurological condition and a valid disability. And a child with sensory processing issues doesn't need to be shamed in any situation, and they don't need to be coerced to do things that cause them pain. Because really, sensory processing disorder, when you have a negative sensory input as a trigger, it isn't just uncomfortable or a little annoying. It's often very painful. And it's important to remember that, there are some children who are just picky, but when it comes to children with sensory integration issues, they have a disability, and so accommodation and understanding can go a long way. When you have a neurological or developmental disability, you start off with less brain energy, call it, in the morning than neurotypical people do. And then throughout the day, as a person with sensory processing issues is triggered again and again, that takes up more and more of their brain energy that they would be otherwise putting towards learning or socializing, communicating, and self-regulating. Sensory overload is one of the, I think, biggest and most frequent causes of autistic meltdown. That's why it is so important to allow any person or child with sensory integration issues, autistic or not, to stim in whatever ways that they need to. Because stimming isn't just a meaningless activity or, a repetitive motion just because. While stimming is often an expression of self in autistic people, in people of all neurotypes with sensory integration issues, stimming is the best and most important way to self-regulate. By stimming in whatever way feels natural and comfortable to that person, the person with sensory integration issues is able to block out negative input with good input. For example, a person with sensory integration issues may vocally stim to block out a negative auditory stimulus in their environment. Stimming can also allow and enable a person with sensory processing issues to engage in social situations and to be out in public longer and more often because they have a way to deal with all of the anxiety and the pain and the stress that comes from negative sensory input. So when it comes to helping your child or loved one or yourself deal with sensory integration issues, stimming is a very important part of that. Allowing stimming, even encouraging stimming, and exploring, if you are a person with sensory integration issues, what stims can you do in certain situations to help yourself and to lessen the pain and the mental burden of dealing with negative sensory input. And then of course, because the world isn't made for us, there are going to be times when we have to accommodate for ourselves. For myself, I always carry with me in my bag or my purse a pair of earplugs, some wet wipes, to deal with any stickiness I might accidentally come across, some gum, which provides really good deep sensory input in your jaw. And I don't have any sunglasses right now, but I know that to combat bright sunlight or the flickering of fluorescent lights, which is just awful, a combination of sunglasses and a hat with a brim, or just one or the other, can lessen the pain from bright or flickering or bad colored light sources a lot. So I'm currently looking for a pair of sunglasses that feel comfy enough for me to wear and that I like the look of. But when I find a pair that I do like, I will definitely include them in my little kit of sensory things to help me deal with negative sensory input. The important thing to remember is that sensory processing disorder and sensory integration issues in autistic people are a real and valid neurological condition, and that without accommodation or understanding, they can really inhibit your life and be super hard to deal with. And in remembering that sensory processing disorder is a real disability, you can also remember that with accommodation, you can lead a happy and healthy and successful life. And that having sensory integration issues or being autistic doesn't mean that you can't live a rich and fulfilling and joyful life. It just might require some accommodation, a little bit of foresight or planning, and some understanding from the people around you. So this has been my video on sensory processing disorder, just a brief overview. If you have questions about this topic or would like to discuss anything I said in this video, feel free to post in the comment section because I would love to foster some discussion on this topic and hear from all of you. Do you have sensory processing disorder? Do you love somebody who does? And if you have a question that you would like answered via video, feel free to post your autism-related question in the comment section below, or message it to me if you would like it to be anonymous. And if you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you would like more videos about autism and to see new Ask an Autistic episodes when they come out on Thursdays. Thanks for watching my video.
I want a renaissance to shine a light, be the change we want, set things right. We've been waiting in the dark for so long.